I now yield to the ranking member for his opening statement.
And thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Authoritarian states use propaganda to dehumanize their victims and to mask their brutality. The propagandist's purpose, Aldous Huxley said, is to, quote, make one set of people forget that another set of people is human. Today, for example, Vladimir Putin tries to make people forget about the humanity of 38 million Ukrainians that he wants to control. He tries to make people forget about Alexei Navalny, whom he poisoned, falsely imprisoned, and killed. The Chinese government tries to make people forget about the humanity of millions of Tibetans and Uyghurs who President Xi mercilessly persecutes, incarcerates, and represses. But with their intensive programs of propaganda today, the autocrats seek not only to subdue their own populations, but to confuse and demoralize people who live in democratic societies. Today's hearing is about China's political warfare, but China exists as part of an axis of authoritarian powers and parties, the center of which is Russia, whose propaganda playbook the CCP studies carefully and increasingly imitates and follows. In the struggle between democracy and authoritarianism today, the central military battlefield is, of course, Ukraine, which has been invaded and hammered by Putin. More than 10,000 civilians have been killed and 12 million people have been driven from their homes. Russia spreads terror with rape, child kidnapping, torture, and murder. And China is assisting Russia in this filthy war of aggression by helping Putin rebuild its military-industrial complex. And China is watching closely what happens in Ukraine. As Prime Minister Kishida of Japan told us on the floor last week, the Ukraine of today may be the East Asia of tomorrow. But if Ukraine is the central military battlefield in this showdown, the democratic societies of the world are the central psychological and political battlegrounds as the tyrants inject lies and disinformation into our politics. For a decade now, our intelligence community, law enforcement, and national security agencies have warned of the systematic and pervasive efforts by Vladimir Putin, his intelligence operatives, his Internet Research Agency, and his allies to destabilize our politics, sabotage our campaigns, affect our election outcomes, and poison our society with divisive racial, ethnic, religious, and ideological propaganda. Just this morning, Mr. Chairman, the Washington Post reported on a secret document written by Russia's foreign ministry that leaked out. As the article explains, Russia is seeking to subvert Western support for Ukraine and disrupt the domestic politics of the United States and European countries through propaganda campaigns supporting isolationist and extremist policies. Russia's foreign ministry says that Ukraine is the main crucible of our times. According to the Post, quote, the document says the outcome of Russia's war in Ukraine will to a great degree determine the outlines of the future world order, a clear indication Moscow sees the result of its invasion as inextricably bound up with its ability and that of other authoritarian nations to impose its will globally. Ukraine is where the world must stand against tyranny today. And now China is following Russia very closely. An article this month in the Washington Post titled, China's Advancing Efforts to Influence the U.S. Election Raises Alarm. It says, in an echo of Russia's influence campaign before the 2016 election, China now appears to be trying to harness partisan divisions in America to undermine Biden administration's policies. The Foundation for Defense of Democracies identified as part of this effort 170 inauthentic pages and accounts on Facebook that have been pushing anti-American messages, including pointed attacks on President Biden. Many of these disinformation nodes bring Chinese and Russian propaganda together to undermine U.S. foreign policy. Quote, in February, according to the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, a Chinese account on X calling itself a Western name alongside a mega 2024 reference shared a video from RT, the Russian TV network controlled by the Kremlin, to claim that Mr. Biden and the CIA had sent a neo-Nazi gangster to fight in Ukraine. The narrative was debunked by the investigative group Bellingcat, But the very next day, the Post received an enormous boost when Alex Jones, the podcaster known for spreading false claims and conspiracy theories, shared it on his platform with 2.2 million followers. This kind of Chinese, Russian, MAGA propaganda and disinformation. For example, Putin is trying to stop the democracies from helping Ukraine by claiming that his war of conquest is really meant to remove Nazis from power. Denazification, he calls it. He invites us to believe that Ukraine is a Nazi state, even though it is actually a liberal representative democracy committed to the equal rights of all of its citizens, and even though the people chose as their president Vladimir Zelensky, the only Jewish person serving as a president anywhere in the world outside of the state of Israel. Yet the denazification myth has spread to the MAGA precincts of Congress. Just this week, one of our colleagues on the committee who was trying to topple the Speaker of the House this week because he wants to allow a fair floor vote on a security package to Ukraine recycled a defamatory lie about Ukraine. She tweeted, "It is anti-Semitic to make Israeli aid contingent on funding Ukrainian Nazis." I learned of this tweet from an outraged Ukrainian-American constituent whose Christian family was involved in saving Ukrainian Jews from both Hitler and Stalin. She said it was, quote, "painful beyond words to see Marjorie Taylor Greene publicly slandering Ukrainians who are only trying to protect their fellow citizens from Russian mass murder." A similar disinformation ploy fundamentally distorted the work of our own committee over the last year. The key evidence in this committee's protracted impeachment quest, Alexander Smirnov's infamous FBI Form 1020, replete with salacious allegations about multi-million-dollar bribes to President Biden, turned out to be a tissue of lies planted by a person with close and extensive ties to Russian intelligence. GOP members of Congress have thus used Russian-generated disinformation to call democratic Ukraine an enemy of the United States, to deny the people of Ukraine desperately needed military help, and to try and impeach the President of the United States who has committed no offense, much less an impeachable one. Even with a decade of reports from national security and intelligence agencies establishing Russia's active measure campaigns in our politics, many of our colleagues try to drown out such warnings by chanting Russia hoax or Russia, 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 essentially asking us to believe Vladimir Putin over our own government agencies. I'm happy to say it won't work anymore. The Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and the Republican chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee are themselves forcefully sounding the alarm about the saturation of American politics and Congress by Russian propaganda. Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul warned earlier this month that, quote, Russian propaganda has made its way into the United States, unfortunately, and it's infected a good chunk of my party's base. Chairman McCaul has called out members of the GOP for spreading Russian propaganda. Intelligence Committee Chair Mike Turner reiterated McCaul's warning and added that specific disinformation ploys have penetrated Congress. As a result of Russian propaganda, he said, quote, there are members of Congress today who still incorrectly say that this conflict between Russia and Ukraine is over NATO, which of course it is not. Our rejection of foreign propaganda interference in our politics, Mr. Chairman, should not depend on whether our party is the victim or the beneficiary of the effort. We all lose when American political dialogue falls prey to the disinformation of foreign states who are not members of our political community. Foreign governments have no right to define our campaigns, control our elections, or thwart our legislative process. The Ukrainian people are fighting a momentous battle against tyranny and corruption to defend democracy. We need to be on their side, and that means we need to disenthrall ourselves from the disinformation and propaganda tactics being waged against us by all the autocratic powers, meaning Russia and China, as well as Iran and North Korea. It's time we work together on this project, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses, especially Professor Snyder, a leading historian of Europe and leading analyst of how authoritarian governments work and how they try to undermine freedom and democracy. Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
4 seconds.
4 seconds, 3, 2, all right. Time's expired.
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter information for the record.
What's the information?
Oh, my God.
State the information.
Thank you.
I reserve the right to object. The minority has not provided a copy of the material for the record. In the past, she's displayed pornography. Is pornography allowed to be, or pornographic photos allowed to be displayed in this committee room, Mr. Chairman?
It's not pornography.
Okay, well, you're the expert. How do you?
I'm not an expert, Mr. Raskin.
Seems like it.
Mr. Chairman, I object to the unanimous consent
Mr. Chairman,
request.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold
All
on.
you need is one objection.
We need decorum. I'm gonna let the lady state, and then if you object still, we'll go from there.
Mr. Chairman, don't we have the opportunity to review the material before
I
it's
reclaim my
provided?
time. I reclaim my time. Mr. Chair, I reclaim my time. I'd like to enter for the record an excerpt from a bank statement.
there's a
bank
objection,
statement that's
Mr. Chairman.
public in regards
object?
to Hunter Biden
Mr. Mifune
and his
has already
bank
objected.
accounts, in his payments.
Mr. Chairman,
for
I object
Okay.
to the styrofoam board. It's not a
Reclaiming
document.
reclaiming order. We'll,
Clearly, Democrats today don't want the truth to come out.
Mr. Chairman,
But
this just
I-
means that
I would
any
like to
member will
enter
be able
for
to
the
add to
record-
their 5 minutes by putting on a display of
Mr.
placards.
Chairman, I'd like to enter for the record.
I think
a
all
Mr. Chairman, I
members-
from
I
a
object.
bank report that shows
Can we
proof
get some order
of
here?
Hunter
Mr.
Biden's
Chairman,
bank accounts
where are we in
and
the-
human
all right,
trafficking.
okay. Let's hold off on this. There's several objections. We're going to talk staffs between each other, and then we'll go from there. But I understand, I think what you're saying is from the laptop.
Someone on this committee accused me of revenge porn, and I have a right to respond to that, and I'd like to introduce
Within the rules of the
evidence
committee,
don't.
everyone.
for the
Mr. Chairman,
record. This is important evidence for the record, and it pertains to our investigation into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And this comes
So
from
do it behind closed doors like you do it.
Object.
It doesn't appear to be bad, but you ought to.
but, Mr. Chairman, she's got
is the
9
relevance
placards
of
there. Does she get an additional 5
But
minutes or 10 minutes?
I don't understand how any of you who support the
Well, what's
genital
the order?
mutilation
Okay.
of children
We're
and
gonna
drag queens
we're
showing
gonna
their body parts
reclaim
at parades
order here.
are
We'll
offended.
suspend and let the staff discuss the evidence from the laptop being entered into the record. Chair now recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so
Okay. Hold on. We suspend, so we need to stop for a moment. Okay, hold on. We'll get this. Y'all going to discuss? You want to go?